We are recording this episode on January 2nd, which means we have all spent a little time setting our New Year's resolutions. But this episode is going to be not about your average New Year's resolutions. We are going to take this to an entirely new level. In this episode, guys, we're going to be talking about setting smarter goals, what that actually means, and the things you can be doing to achieve your goals this time around here in 2025, so we're not looking back in 2026 at the same empty list. But first, talk a little bit about how the new year went. We've got some cool things going on in the background, so just catch you guys up a little bit. What did you guys do for New Year's?
Hung out with you fools.
Well, by hang out, you mean we all went to bed at 9 o'clock.
We're in bed at 9 o'clock and we slept till 7 a.m. and it was glorious.
It was
glorious. We had some crazy, well, I know you didn't hear it, Joelle, but there was like crazy thunder and lightning happening at your house. And apparently it was back here too because our parents witnessed it, but it was like intense. I know you were dead to the world as soon as you laid down. I was dead
to the world. I went down with a bad headache, and that's how I ended 2024.
I saw a post that said, I didn't go out for New Year's Eve 2024 because I'm pregnant, but I still woke up feeling hungover because I'm pregnant. And that's kind of how I felt.
I can't remember the last time we either went out or stayed up until midnight for New Year's. Like, this is pre-kids.
I don't think we have.
Yeah, definitely pre-kids for us.
Like, it was beyond, like, years beyond pre-kids. It's been a minute.
Well, I don't think we did because we stopped drinking, like, when we met. So there was really we never, I don't think, went out.
I think the first New Year's we were together, we might have stayed up for the ball drop. And then by the second, you're like, what is the point? Like, we're sitting on the couch waiting for this thing to happen so we can go to bed. So let's just go to bed.
Yeah, I can't think of something I'd want to do less than sit in my own house. Like if you're gonna go out for New Year's, go out, own it, have your fun, whatever. You know you're gonna feel like shit the next day. There is no reason for me to feel like I should sit home and even not drink, but stay up till midnight, knowing I will feel like ass the next day. It feels so silly for me. And maybe you guys too, with kids, like knowing like I want to function the next day. I want to work out the next day. I got to take care of my kids the next day. Like, I can't think of something I'd want to do less than sit in my own home and ruin my next day sleep. At least let me go out. Granted, like, I didn't want to go out, but
with kids, they don't really sleep in. Like, maybe Kai started to. I know you said Sloan.
Not at her house. He was up at 5 o'clock both days.
Yeah, Kai was
when
ready
we're not
to start
home
the day before any of us.
But I mean, like, generally speaking, like if in the past, like when we've had him up a little bit later for like holidays or whatever, he would sleep in a little bit. Cora, forget it. Like, when you have littles, like, they're on such a schedule that it does not matter. They don't sleep in. So to that
even
point,
if they go to
like,
bed later, you're like, oh,
right.
maybe I have to put them down an hour later. They'll sleep in an hour later. No,
doesn't work. So it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say it's slightly depressing. Like, each year that passes, certain holidays hold less excitement and meaning. And like, it was just something to look forward to. And now, not to take away from any of the others, but like, unless it's a holiday that we are like excited for the kids, like doing something with them, for them, getting everyone together, like, it's just, it doesn't get you rolling again. Doesn't get you excited. And it's just a little bit depressing. I'd like to have that excitement again, but again, to stay up to midnight for this one, that just doesn't align with anything that we do.
I think it's also like when you're a kid or a teenager, those holidays and stuff meant like no school, extra time with your friends. And now you're like, okay, well, now no school means kids are home. We're also business owners, which means we don't have a day off for like a holiday regardless. And so I think we probably view, I mean, everyone I'm sure views the holidays in general differently as an adult than a kid. But I think it's also maybe because we're not necessarily off the same way other people might be off.
That's fair. That said, we are definitely kicking off 2025 with a ton of gratitude. obviously for the situations that we're in, for all of the circumstances that have brought us together, and the stars have aligned in a certain way. And that's one of the things we were talking about New Year's Eve night at 7:30, right before we went to sleep. Everything we've done right, everything we've done wrong has really led to this. If one thing
Was different.
was 1 degree different, like we wouldn't be here. Levolution wouldn't be a thing. Project B wouldn't be a thing. So the good, the bad, the ugly, every single bit brought us to this point. And we just talked about being very grateful for that. We also got some more news today regarding Project B that we are unbelievably grateful for. So for those of you who are slowly starting to catch on and latch onto these episodes and follow a little bit, if you're new, if you're following one or the other, or you haven't been here forever, Project B is the second major announcement that we are going to have coming. The first was the merge. The second one is, I don't even know how to describe it without giving it all away, but it's a huge pivot. There's a lot that has been going into this. Our time.
It's a pivot, but it's also not a pivot.
It's not
A pivot may not be the
pivot.
right word.
The project is still well within the health and fitness
Yes.
area. Like, I don't want to say pivot like we're launching a gardening center.
That's the
You know,
first
like-
thing that came to your mind.
That was the first. Yeah, sadly, that was the first thing that came to mind. I think it was because I looked down at my desk and I saw like fake plants sitting there, and I was like, "Oh, plants."
Do they sell
anyway.
fake plants at a garden center?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Anyway, my point is just, yes, it's a pivot, but I don't think it's so far fetched.
No, I mean, again, probably not the best term. More, it's an unbelievable enhancement to what we've been doing.
Yes, an enhancement. I like that.
Yeah, I had a post that I put up yesterday or the day before, and
I was gonna say Josh started dropping like golden nuggets,
Golden
like
nuggets.
I don't know what else to call it, but like you didn't even give us a warning that you were gonna start hinting at this, and I was like, oh
no.
Yeah,
Nope, I
you
wanted
didn't
this to be a surprise for everybody.
You didn't even consult with our marketing chief over here.
I did not. I wanted this to be just, I saw it and I'm excited. So post was 2025 is the year we start to change the world. Everything we've done to this point has prepared us for this. Here's what we promise. And this is the big three, what we're talking about right now. Something for everyone. No matter your situation or circumstance, we will have something to help you live your happiest, healthiest life. Number 2, second to none. The resources we provide will be backed by the best credentials and technology in the industry. They will also be simple to use on a daily basis. And number 3, the ultimate community. You are not alone, even if it feels that way sometimes. You will have the support you need through the hard times to lift you up, as well as the good times to keep you up. Change is coming. I tagged our whole team. And I think that just really encapsulates our push for this year. It's something for everyone. We will be second to none. Again, the resources, the credentials we have on our team already, those have been there. And coaching will be enhanced by this, but we already have that there. What's coming next is the best technology in the industry. And I don't say that lightly, like, we're going to be like, this is something it's not there. You can't find it. All the components that are going to be within this and with the tech behind it doesn't exist. And the ultimate community, which we have already started building. You guys have been so incredible. I threw up a post in our group in Facebook just asking if anyone could leave some reviews. We just launched Trustpilot and Google reviews. Like, hey, if you guys have a minute, we would absolutely love to leave reviews. And the stuff you guys wrote was glowing. It was, if anyone's having a bad day on our team, like, we just go read those. You guys are so awesome. And we're going to build on that. The whole reason we're doing Project B, the whole reason we merged is to bring you guys the best of the best. And there are things we've done in the past, with the right intentions that haven't panned out. We haven't been able to take them to their fullest potential. And this is something with the merge, with Project B, that we are 100% all in on. And it's not this microcosm of, how can we do a little better in our personal lives. Like, it is time to change the world. And it's again, not something we say lightly. It's something that is going to happen because this is that powerful. The community is there. The credentials are there. The tools are on their way. Hopefully we're seeing this Q1 of 25, but the people we're working with have been unbelievable to work with, and the things that we've been able to do just with their specific niche in regards to the tech, in regards to putting these things up, and just the way they fully supported our vision for this. I can't say enough. I can't say enough about how grateful we are, and everything happening for a reason again. So just starting to kind of roll it into what we're going to be talking about today, starting from a place of gratitude, having that level foundation to just be able to build from and kind of not let yourself fall back too far from. I feel like that's a really important piece.
I also think we can't say enough how much we are grateful for this community that we have had the honor of building, because I don't think that we would be even doing Project B if it weren't for the support and the feedback that we have gotten from people previously within the SD community or the Level 10 community, and now the Levolution community, the podcast listeners, the Facebook group. Like, we are so excited and so passionate about Project B because we have this huge community of people who are like, yes, I want to be a part of this, and I want resources for XYZ. And having a supportive community is allowing us to even build something that will now further allow us to support the community. So I think it's just this really cool cycle of being supported by the community and now building something that's going to support that same community.
And you guys know how superstitious I am. I've got the baseball background. My favorite player growing up was Nomar Garciaparra.
Superstitious. Brant
So
is just
I don't
say anything.
He's like, oh.
So I don't like
this is new to
jinxing.
me.
Yeah, I don't like jinxing things, but this is something I can just say because I can see it, I can feel it, I can taste it, I can smell it. This is going to be one of the coolest things that anyone ever brings to you. And we did this. There are certain things that are broken in the world that we are going to fix. I'm emphatic about that. So That's our little teaser. You guys will start seeing and hearing more of these teasers throughout the coming weeks. But today is about setting goals, and it's not in the way that you would typically hear. And you've probably seen 15 podcast titles this morning about setting your goals and reaching your goals in 2025. But we are going to play this in an entirely different way. You might even say a smarter way.
See what you did there. I thought this would be a great topic to dive into. Every year when I was still a health teacher teaching high school, every year in health class, we'd come back, January 2nd or whatever it is when school started back up again. And I would always do a lesson on goal setting. Very cheesy, very cliche, but like, hey, that's what high school teachers are. And so something that I would teach about was something called SMART goals. And probably you've heard of SMART goals before. If you've ever heard of like a goal setting framework, SMART is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. That is what is like the pieces of SMART goals. And a few years ago, I had Kasey on the podcast right around like New Year's, and we were talking about New Year's resolution goals, and from an evidence-based like health behavior change standpoint, what we like and don't like about SMART goals. And Kasey went on to say that she essentially has modified SMART goals into smarter goals. So adding an ER at the end, but she has also changed some of the initial letters of the acronyms, like specific and measurable have stayed the same, but instead of attainable, she calls it additive. And so shout out to Kasey for kind of teaching me this new framework in the past, but I thought it would be really cool to dive into the evidence-based way, essentially, to set goals in a way that actually will allow you to follow through with them.
Yeah, if you guys don't know Kasey, so Coach Kasey Jo on Instagram, she is like your mindset fitness coach person that you would go to for anything mindset related. But I think almost all of our coaches, if not all of them, are certified through her health mindset certification. So it's something that we have seen plays such a big impact with our clients in just the mindset side of approaching health and fitness. So if you're like, who is Joelle talking about? Who's Kasey? We'll probably try to have her on the podcast at some point. But she's incredible, and you guys should go give her a follow. But that's kind of who coined the term smarter goals here, and that's really where we're pulling all of this information from today.
And you guys know how big we are on the mindset stuff. It's the foundation for everything. It's what allows you to stay consistent. It allows you to prevent yourself from getting too high or too low so you can continue on this path. So this is obviously a big part of what we we do. It's one of the main pillars of our L5 method.
And I think as we go through the smarter goal framework, people are going to see a lot of like why we wanted to talk about this, because a lot of it is in small ways, things that we talk about on the podcast all the time. Something like your goals being specific, and that it's not enough to say like, I just want to lose weight this year. Like that's not specific enough. It needs to have more detail. That goal is a goal that needs to have more detail. I want to lose X amount of weight, or I want to do this in order to lose the weight. There has to be some aspect of specificity, because the more vague things are, the less likely we are to follow through with them. So I think as we further go into each of these, you're going to see how a lot of what we talk about either comes back to the L5 method or comes back to just our philosophies on coaching or health or fitness in general.
So we'll jump into each one of these specifically. So to dive into the first one specific, this is something even in the past week, let me backtrack. I journal every day. We've talked about this before. I go through 3 main sections in my journal. The first one is today I feel, ... insert emotions. Second one is my intentions for the day. So typically, and this is the one I'm going to focus on right now, just so you know, the third one is what I'm grateful for. But the intentions, I am present, or I will be present, I will be patient, I will be productive. Could be 3 of the basics that I had been writing down for the last month. But realizing I'm not being specific enough, and this is picking up from a few different books that I've read, and was like, I can take this further. I will be present when I'm with my kids. And rather than blanketly saying I'm going to be productive, I will complete whatever my main objective is for work that day. Like this is the thing I will get done. And then even, I believe it was yesterday, we got home. I was tired as hell. We made a good time coming back from New York, but I was exhausted. So I threw down a cortado and I actually did my journal and I wrote down, I will have a fantastic workout. And I finished it. Took my non-stim pre-workout, and I just had a badass workout. I got in there. That was my mindset immediately shifted. Now, part of that is saying this is exactly what I'm going to do, and it's not this vague thing that you can't really connect the dots on. But if you want to break down the science a little bit, there is this thing called your reticular activating system, which is a bundle of nerves that sits in your brainstem, and its job is to regulate behavioral arousal, consciousness, and motivation. So how do we hack it? How do we activate your RAS? You say your goals out loud. You go through manifestation, you imagine yourself achieving them. This is going to disrupt negative thinking patterns. You look at images, but really it's the saying it out loud and it's physically writing it down. It's not typing it in your phone. It's not typing it on your computer. It's pen to paper. This is the thing. And it's kind of like when you buy a new car, let's say you get a red Suburban. And then as you're driving down the road, you notice there are 500,000 other red Suburbans. Like that is now on your mind. That's all you see. This kind of objective is to almost create this singularity of focus where this is what I'm working on. I've spoken it into the world. I've written it down. I've manifested it. And all the other decisions you're going to make, the habits you implement are going to be related to that specific thing. So your RAS, you guys can Google this and look a little bit further, but just to put some science behind the concept of writing it down, of getting granularly specific, it will change the game for you right off the bat.
Yeah, I really love actually writing. I actually went back to, I was toying around with like getting an actual planner again this year. I used to be big into like having an actual notebook, pen and paper planner. And then we switched and kind of started using Google Calendar just because like I need to sync my stuff with Josh. And like now we have all these things going on within the business. It just makes sense. And I still use that. But I saw it on TikTok, actually, like someone was using their iPad as a planner. And I was like, oh, that's really cool because you have your iPad, your iPencil. Is it an iPencil or just a pencil?
Apple Pencil.
I don't know. Apple Pencil. So it's digital, but I'm actually writing. And I get the best of both worlds because I'm such a digital person, but I'm getting that act of actually writing down what my plan is for the day, for the week, taking notes, all of that. So I thought that was a really cool kind of in-between way if you are somebody who does like the digital side of things, but you still want to actually write. I felt cool for actually finding that out. And I'm sure people have done this for years, but like we had an iPad sitting here that we don't use for the business. And I was like, I'm going to adopt this as mine and start.
Swiped it right off my desk.
I did.
So
that was specific.
Be specific in your goal setting. Goal setting is the main point of that one.
All right. Next up, measurable. So this is another one that kind of stayed the same. Kasey did not need to modify this one. But you have to be able to measure your goal, because if you can't measure it in any way, it's really hard to actually improve upon whatever you're trying to achieve. So I think I'm glad she kept this one, because this was kind of the first two really are the ones that I sort of align with the most when I heard about SMART goals in the past. So it's good to hear that she kind of approved keeping it. But this one's kind of simple. Like, if it's not something you can specifically measure, I mean, just think about tracking macros, right? So if you're somebody who wants to improve their nutrition and you have a body composition goal, or maybe you want to gain some, whatever, lose fat, gain muscle, whatever, tracking macros is going to make that process so much more efficient and easier in a sense, because it gives you a clear picture of what you need to measure every single day in order to achieve whatever the goal is at the end, compared to somebody who maybe isn't tracking macros, doesn't really have a ton of nutritional knowledge, kind of is just eating intuitively, going with the flow. They might see progress. There are other ways to kind of make sure you see progress, but it might be slower and at a slower rate than someone who is being very specific and measurable when it comes to what they're tracking. So that's kind of the example I always refer back to, because it's obviously something we talk about all the time. But I don't know, do you guys have any other examples of measurable for people?
Yeah, I think the calorie one is a big one. You know, we might get someone that applies to, let's say, work with us, who's like, you know, I've done. That's so funny. I just got a text pop up on my computer from Kasey. She heard us talking about her.
She knows.
Ears are burning.
Are you talking about smarter goals right now? So I was just gonna say, yeah, you know, similarly with calorically, I know, you know, it's easy for sometimes people to be like, you know, I'm eating 1,200 calories and I'm still not losing any weight, let's say. And you're like, oh, okay, how long have you been eating 1,200 calories? Oh, well, like maybe a few months. Okay, what app are you using to track that? Oh, I'm not tracking that. Or it's like, oh, okay, how long have you know, what were your calories at before you dropped to 1,200? Well, I don't know, I wasn't actually measuring them. And it's like, okay, so remember that what we measure is what we can manage. And now not everyone wants to track calories and macros, and that's perfectly fine. But we can manage things better when we measure things. Or it's like someone saying, you know, I'm just not losing weight. I'm not losing weight. Oh, well, how often do you weigh yourself? Well, I don't weigh myself anymore. You know, I don't like getting on the scale. It's like, okay, so how do you know you're not losing weight? Do you take progress pictures? No. Do you weigh yourself? No. Do you take circumference measurements? No. Okay, so how do you know? How are you measuring that goal? So I think that one very much pertains to health and fitness and calories and weigh-ins. And I think it's part of why we like to gather as much data as we can in the client experience, both on the biofeedback side of things. Like, we're not just measuring weight or progress pictures. We're also measuring things like, how are your energy levels? How is your hunger? Because again, the more we can measure things, the more we can manage things and pivot and adjust if something is or isn't going the way we want it to.
And these first two really go hand in hand. When it's measurable, it's going to become more specific. If it's not specific, it's going to be very difficult to measure. So kind of making sure that you have one to get to the next checkpoint is your first, I guess, circle back. It's your first checkpoint. Make sure these two things go together. So pretty straightforward on that one. You guys want to dive into the change?
Yeah. So this one, Kasey changed. So the old A in SMART goals is attainable, which she is not a fan of. And she replaced that with the word additive, which I love. We talk a lot about focusing on what you can add in, especially in the realm of like nutrition, obviously in training too, but nutrition specifically, like this one kind of aligns with some stuff we talk about often. So instead of saying something like, and this is the example that she gives, I have to take away Netflix time to go to the gym. if you're somebody who loves Netflix and you love watching new movies and shows and you want to replace that with the gym, it's probably not going to be super fun for you. It's going to make you honestly hate the gym, probably. So instead, you focus on how you can add in activity in a way that makes sense for your life, that is enjoyable and doesn't result in you having to take something else away. And I think that's a huge mistake a lot of people make when it comes to setting new goals, especially New Year's resolutions, is they feel like they have to subtract all of these areas from their life. And before they know it, they're changing everything. And it's like, whoa, my life looks completely different, which may feel good at first. For a few weeks, you might, be excited and hyped up about it. But at some point, if you're changing too much too soon and taking all of these things away that you previously did enjoy and made up the life that you were living, it's not gonna last. It's not gonna result in a positive net outcome of whatever you're trying to achieve.
The I have to versus I get to shift in your mindset, it just in and of itself is very powerful, whether it's within the smarter goal framework or just in life, and being able to change to that appreciation. I get to cut my grass because I have a house, because I have a yard. It's just a big shift there. But just as far as the being an additive versus subtracting, when you focus on adding the positive thing, you might end up subtracting other things by default. But it's going to be because this other thing makes me feel so much better. I'm enjoying things so much more that there is less time, energy, effort that's even able to go into these other things that I didn't need to proactively remove, that just happened by default. And that's really it has a bigger impact when it comes to creating lasting change. When you restrict yourself, you're subtly going to want it. And that subtle is going to grow. It's going to grow. It's going to grow until eventually you just cave into it. Versus I added this thing because there's a ton of value that I'm getting from it. And these things kind of fell to the wayside by default. So just, again, to kind of talk about what's going into that framework and why it works in a certain way.
I think adding versus subtracting is one of the number one things that people actually get wrong in their health and fitness journey. If you have ever started a diet or a training program or whatever, and you feel like you're someone who's maybe on that roller coaster of like the yo-yo diet, or like I work out for a little bit and then I fall off, or I work out for a little bit and I fall off, or a diet for a little bit and then I regain the weight, and so on. I think usually the mindset that ends up making that sort of vicious cycle is that people so often associate health and fitness with needing to subtract. You need to take away sugar. You need to take away salt. You need to take away sweets. You need to take away yummy stuff. You need to take away TV time. You need to take away screen time. And then what is the mindset going into health and fitness? You're like, this sucks. I've taken away everything I love. Versus our approach has always been, what can we add? Where can we add color into your day? Where can we add movement into your day? Where can we add more sleep into your routine? And how can we do it in a way that fits your schedule and also is enjoyable for you? And so I think that one is just super aligned with our philosophy as a whole, is we have talked previously about adding instead of subtracting. And so I think that one fits really well, especially as a swap from what was previously there, which was attainable. Most people don't know what's attainable. Most people don't have even a great understanding of what they are capable of. And so if you don't understand what you're capable of, or you don't understand or can't conceptualize what 20 pounds looks like, or what it would take to lose that 20 pounds, or how much time it would take to lose that 20 pounds, how do you know what's attainable? So I think that one was just like too open for interpretation, which is why I love additive instead of attainable too.
Yeah. Attainable like really kind of creates a ceiling as far as what you believe you're capable of too. And right. I think that's something I see a lot just in like comments on social media and just in general, is people say things like, well, I could never do that. Or, they have this inner self-belief that is super limiting, that they see someone else achieving something and it's almost like, oh, like they're just on a different level than me. Like I could never, ever do something like that. So I think it just kind of, it creates the ceiling as far as an upper limit of what you can actually achieve, when in reality, you probably can achieve that and more with the right tools and techniques and mindset to get you there. So I think I'm glad she nixed that one too, just from that side of things.
Can I also sorry.
I was just gonna. It's a great thing to bring up because especially if someone doesn't have that support in their immediate family or just in their personal circle and their network, like attainable seems entirely unrealistic. When in actuality, you're the one who can break those chains, whether it's generations in your family, whether it is your circle. Like you can set the new limit, or not that it's a limit, but you can set the new standard. Hey, I was able to do this, and it's going to feel impossible for a lot of people. It's going to seem impossible because they haven't seen it. And especially in this day and age of, oh, everybody's genetically enhanced. Everyone's taking PEDs and oh, that person can't be natty. So I can't do that. This is as far as I can go. Nobody really understands how far you can actually push it. So to be able to change that from realistic to rewarding, I think is a great way. And I'm glad you guys brought up, like, what do you even consider realistic? It's just too open-ended.
I guess we kind of jumped into the next one there. We were still talking about the previous one, Josh.
About attainable.
Yeah.
Attainable.
Wow, I was reading R and I transitioned from what you guys just said. So my fault.
Thanks for the smooth transition though. I did want to bring up something. I don't know, Alessandra, if you even know where I'm going with this, but as soon as you started talking about
I have an idea.
You know where I'm going. Because we just talked about this the other day, but I feel like it's actually a really relevant point.
Yeah.
So Alessandra, you had a video recently that was kind of going a little bit maybe mini viral. And it was literally just like your nighttime routine. It was like, I put my kids down to bed at 7:30 and I wash my face and I read a book and I do my skincare and I get in bed, and people went nuts. And they see obviously that you're very pregnant and they're like, wait till the kid gets here. You're not going to be able to do that. Spoken like someone who's never been a mom before. And you had all these crazy comments who just click on her page. You'll see she's pregnant with her third child. But B, it was so interesting to both of us how you posting that seemed so unattainable to people. And it's very interesting to me because something that was so benign, like sharing your nighttime routine, really triggered some people. And it was triggering because people felt like it was unrealistic and unattainable for them. And I don't think that you are posting with the intention of, look how special I am. I'm capable of doing these things and you're not. I think your intention is, this is my life and I'm sharing a piece of it with you. And I also want to show you this can be attainable and this is realistic, and that you can train when you're 32 weeks pregnant and you can deadlift when you're 32 weeks pregnant. And it's really just so dependent on the mindset of the people that end up seeing that piece of content, because you are either looking at it and saying, wow, that is freaking awesome. That is badass that she's deadlifting that pregnant. Or you're looking at that and being like, you're setting unrealistic expectations for pregnant women. Mm-hmm. And so there's such a difference in the mindset of how you approach a piece of content. And again, we've talked about this before, if something doesn't resonate with you, it's not for you. End of story, period, move on, scroll past it. But I just thought that was really relevant to bring up in the attainable conversation, because we're out here trying to show you that you can manage sleep and business and fitness and kids. And there are going to be some people, no matter what, that look at it and say, nope, not attainable. But that's not an Alessandra problem. That's their interpretation of it problem.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought it up. I kind of had a feeling you were going to bring that up once I started talking.
I feel like soon as I was about to jump in, you immediately looked at me and you knew what I was about to say. I saw you start to smirk. I'm like, she knows I'm going here.
Yep. But it's such an important conversation, and you hit the nail on the head. And I'm not out here gloating. I think I'm better than everyone else. And it's funny because the things that I showed in that video are such basic human tasks.
Yeah.
Cleaning my kitchen, going to bed early, skincare, reading a book before bed, winding down. I think it was the time that triggered people the most.
Where are your kids when you're doing all this? They're you're sleeping. What it was such an
I feel like everyone's lifestyle has drifted so far that does seem unreal. Everything for, not to talk down, but it's such a mess. It's such a struggle for so many people that they're like, this normal thing that should be normal isn't, because obviously right now normal is not optimal. But how are you doing that? It's just consistency with the tiny little things that make the biggest difference. And that seems crazy to people.
And it's consistency with our kids. We talked about this in the last sleep episode. Yeah. a lot of people will see that and think, oh, she's lucky she has good sleepers. I'm not lucky. Like, they have not always
I
been good
hired someone to
sleepers.
help my kids be good sleepers.
We put in the work to educate ourselves from someone else who was an expert in baby and child behavior and sleep to put ourselves in this position. And that's why my kids go to bed early. That's why they're able to put themselves to sleep.
That's why they nap good. That's
a
why they
16-month-old. Yes. Yeah. So it's not luck. It's a lot of intention and just education and implementation and being consistent with that as parents, and also just as humans. Like, you thrive on consistency. Your kids will also thrive on consistency. When you can create a routine and a lifestyle that truly allows your entire family to thrive, you really just become more aware of like what you all are capable of. And that's really the message that we're all here trying to spread.
Right.
Like,
we're not
you
special.
have control of so much more than you think you do. We are not special. We are not like these superhuman freaks that just got blessed with good kids. Like, I don't know. But anyway, yes, I think a lot of people just have this really self-limiting belief that they just can't for insert whatever reason here. And those reasons might be great. You also don't have to do things the exact way that we do them, which is something we also talk about a lot. There are so many different ways to implement a healthy lifestyle, and it's really our mission to help you figure out what that looks like for you.
For you are the key words, what that looks like for you, because what it looks like for us isn't going to be exactly how it looks like for you. And your favorite influencer selling you X, Y, and Z, do it this way and achieve the results of your dreams. It doesn't work like that in any aspect of any goal you have in your entire life. So you take little bits and pieces and you make it work with what works.
And I think that's what ties really well into the rewarding piece that you skipped ahead to, Josh. But
it was actually the one that gets crossed off. So I didn't technically jump into the next one.
Well, it gets changed from realistic to rewarding is what Kasey has. So she gets rid of realistic from SMART goals and she turns it into rewarding, which Alessandra, I think that's what you're talking about too, is we know how getting good sleep makes us feel. We know how journaling in the morning makes us feel. We know how getting in that early morning workout makes us feel. There's a rewarding aspect to it. So if something that we're doing, you try to implement and it doesn't feel rewarding for you, you don't have to do it that way. And that's why, again, it comes back down to like what works for you. A lot of what we do now has come from trial and error and doing things differently in the past and realizing that didn't feel good, or that didn't feel super aligned, or that didn't feel as rewarding for me. So I like the substitution to rewarding because you do want to set up your habits, behaviors, goals, etc. in a way that is going to feel rewarding, because that's how you're going to perceive it as valuable. Because what you don't perceive as valuable or rewarding, you're not going to stick to.
And I want to touch on the idea that rewarding doesn't always mean it's going to feel like rainbows and butterflies either.
Especially in the moment.
Did you just take my slogan?
What's your slogan? Since when do you have a slogan?
For my wife specifically. Say that to her all the time. If I am displeased and I say it somewhat kindly, but not like with rainbows and butterflies, she puts her wall up. So she'll get mad, like, you don't have to say it like that. I'm like, well, everything's not going to be rainbows and butterflies. Like, I'm going to say it if I'm upset in a way that's not.
Kind of a common term, though, Josh.
I have never heard of rainbows and butterflies.
I don't think you coined that phrase.
Everybody go comment this episode on Spotify if you have heard somebody say rainbows and butterflies.
I think a lot of time it's like
sunshine and rainbows. Sunshine and rainbows.
Sunshine and butterflies. Okay, so you're upset because it's
same
specifically rainbows
different
and butterflies.
Context. Do you really want to go into that conversation on the podcast?
Is this the hill you want to die on, Josh?
What conversation?
We're not going there. But where I was going with that is like a few years back, when we were living at my parents' house, I used to say this thing all the time, like, do it for your future self. It was like my little morning walk. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. So every morning I would go for my morning walk. Kai was like, 2 or 3 at that point. He slept till 7 regularly. Like, we were at my parents' house. I could leave the house. We could both leave the house at the same time. There was always an adult there. And I would go for this walk in the morning. and kind of the same mindset that we have now with our 5 a.m. wake ups and early workouts. It's not something that always feels great in the moment. There are so many days we are doing it tired, and just it's not the first thing we want to do, but we're doing it for our future self. And even though sometimes it's not like that immediate feel good thing in the moment, there's not a day that I regret it because I know it's making me better in the future. And that's kind of where that term came from for me. But I think it ties in really well here because a lot of people hear the word rewarding and making it more enjoyable, and they think that it always has to feel good no matter what. And that's just not true.
Well, they'll also talk a lot, and one of the main questions they'll ask a lot is like the motivation. Like, how do you stay motivated, or what do you do when you're not motivated? And when you know this thing is extremely rewarding, once you get through it, and maybe it's not right this second, maybe it's tonight, maybe it's next week, maybe it's just an accumulation over time. But when you know there's a longer term reward, that's your motivation. It's, I don't feel like doing this, especially like think about how tired you feel sometimes. You get in, you're doing it tired for that workout, and afterwards you just feel a little bit better. Like that's the reward. You're not motivated to go do it, but you know what happens on the other side of that bridge, and you know you're going to get that return on your investment.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder how much of our, I'll say like the general population's ability to make decisions for their long-term selves has been impacted by the very fast-paced, instant gratification lives that we currently live. Like, look, I'm a convenience gal. Like, I like getting my groceries delivered, but like that also equals less movement, less walking around a store, less steps. Like there are things that we give up for convenience because it's easier for our short-term selves. Now, obviously, like you, grocery shopping is not having this massive impact on your long-term health versus, you know, getting your groceries delivered. But I think we've become so accustomed to convenience, to immediate answers, to immediate news, to instant gratification and all of that, that I think societally it has almost become harder for people to make decisions for their long-term selves, especially if it means sacrificing short-term comfort. That's the hardest part for people to get past. And 5 a.m. workouts is a great example of that. I don't wake up at 5 a.m. and my alarm goes off and I'm like, wow, can't wait to go put some heavy weight on my back. Like I'm still freaking tired. And that's where do it tired came from. Like I'm still going to wake up and be tired. Even if I got 8 hours of sleep, I'm still lifting weight at 5 a.m. It still feels freaking heavy. But I am sacrificing the short-term comfort of my bed for the long-term gain of better health, better insulin sensitivity, better, you know, more lean muscle mass, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that when we want to make changes and when we want to improve our overall health, when we want to start a new habit, we need to consider how our future self is going to feel and not just our present self. And that's that tie-in for what's rewarding. You can't think about what's going to feel rewarding in the moment. What is going to be rewarding for your long-term future self, and think about that person.
Oftentimes it's short-term comfort for long-term discomfort, short-term discomfort for long-term comfort. So short-term comfort, you stay in bed, you don't get the workout in. Longer-term health kind of deteriorates if you're not making up for it. Short-term discomfort, you get yourself out of bed, you go do the thing, and you're getting the long-term benefits of it. So it's kind of the long-term investing game. If you can reframe it in that way for yourself, this might suck now, but in the long term, there's such a payoff. It is so worth it versus I'm going to do the thing right now. I'm going to go have the giant bowl of ice cream for the 5th night in a row. I'm going to sleep in again. I'm not going to do that thing that's actually going to benefit me. You really have to think about what you're paying in on a daily basis to get that ROI down the road.
All right, T is our next letter. This is another one Kasey changed from time-bound to timely. And I think this is important, especially in our space here with health and fitness goals. Because if you have a hard, let's say you want to lose X amount of weight, we'll use the most popular one, and you need to lose 50 pounds by June 1st, let's say you set your goal as. Yeah, that's specific. that's measurable in a way. But it doesn't factor in life. Like, we all know life is going to happen, and kids get sick. You get sick. Maybe you go through, well, maybe you lose your job. Whatever. So many things can happen that can impact that goal. So if you don't have, or rather, if you do have such a hard goal like that, and then things happen and you don't hit it, it's like, I failed. Like, I did not achieve what I set out to achieve this year. Versus timely is still having an idea and just like a bigger picture look at what the year looks like ahead, for example, and maybe having like a time range of how soon you want to achieve this goal. For example, before I got pregnant, I was planning on doing a full marathon at some point in December, January of this year. So like right now, obviously that's not happening. That's a whole nother conversation, but I didn't actually pick which one I was going to do, and I wasn't going to pick which one I was going to do until months into training, because I wanted to give myself time to build up to that and kind of give myself a buffer. So I picked out 3 different marathons that were contenders and kind of kept those in the back of my mind in this time frame that I wanted to do them in. And as I got closer, I would have signed up for it and done it. That's one example, but just giving yourself enough time to achieve the goal rather than 30 days, 30 pounds in 30 days, or whatever the heck people are preaching to you.
Look, it's why we also it's also why we have a non-negotiable at Levolution of a 3-month minimum. You can't sign on in a month. You're not going to see the results that you want to see in a month. Or if you've been, having poor, let's say, health and fitness habits for the last 10 years, we're not going to fix that in 10 days, or probably not even in 10 weeks, maybe 10 months, but there has to be a timeline or a timely consideration for where you are, where you want to be, what upcoming events you might have, what trips you might have, what holidays, sick kids, like what could potentially interfere. Like your example of in 6 months losing 50 pounds. If we even look at like rate of loss for that, that's like 2 pounds a week roughly. That's not even a necessarily healthy goal for most people. Usually 1 to 1.5 pounds per week is a healthier rate of loss, unless there's, a lot more obesity there than maybe 2 pounds per week. But even from a physiological perspective, that would not be a great timely goal. Maybe that 50 pounds in a year would be more realistic, because then that's about 1 pound per week. But even then, even if that 50 pounds in a year and 1 pound per week, that's also assuming that every week goes perfectly. And that you lose 1 pound every single week, and there's no weeks that end up being a plateau, or that you needed a diet break, or needed to change your workouts or your training or your calories, etc. So having that buffer in there is so important, so that you are not setting yourself up for failure to not reach something that you wanted to.
There's an ultra athlete you pointed me to, Alessandra. Alex V. I'm spacing on his last name. But Viata. So he talks about junk time starting off your cardio. He's like, the first 10 minutes of your cardio doesn't even count. Like, that's just your heart rate becoming elevated. So a similar concept, something a lot of us aren't thinking about, is there's going to be a little junk time in the beginning. You're not going to start with a coach or start on your New Year's resolution and be perfect from that first day. There's going to be a learning period. It might take 3 weeks to get everything reasonably close where you're kind of consistent. And from that point, you really start to hit your stride and you start to be consistent. You start to see the real progress. Whereas most people think, oh, it's been 3 weeks, nothing's changed yet. Well, you really haven't been perfect for those 3 weeks. Like, that was your buffer. You are just getting going. You're starting the machine. So kind of understanding there's going to be this junk time period. And that's obviously not a great term for, what we're talking about with implementing healthy habits, but it's a non-perfect period of time where you're just getting used to it. You're feeling it out. You're adapting your schedule. You're adapting your lifestyle. You're adapting your habits to these things you've deemed important. Once you get those down after a month, now you're going to start seeing the first changes.
And that bleeds into, or moving on to Kasey's additional letter of E, is efficacy. And she says how like efficacy is so important when setting your goals, because things are going to happen. You're going to hit speed bumps. And if you have that just overarching view that you're not going to be perfect and that you can still progress forward and focus on the bigger picture despite things not going perfectly, you're going to succeed. And that's something, again, we talk about all the time with our clients is, we don't expect perfect check-ins. We don't expect you to hit your macros perfectly every week. We don't expect perfect biofeedback. If you're doing everything perfectly, you probably wouldn't need a coach. So just being able to view things just kind of sort of objectively and have that self-efficacy is so important, because that's really, I think, one of the biggest drivers between people who kind of start and stop versus people who do succeed and continue to reach new heights when it comes to their goals.
And I think when we have the goal setting conversation, it can feel overwhelming and daunting as a whole. I actually, props to Alessandra for sending me a new journal, because I have been journaling pretty consistently lately. And I was writing about this morning. I ended up not journaling yesterday. But so today was my first like January 2025 entry. And I was writing about how in previous years, I would sit down, on Jan 1st and make this huge list of goals and, very not super specific, not written out in terms of what we're talking about right now of smarter goals. But I'd have this list of like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And I think that while I may have had the best of intentions, something that would have been helpful would be looking at the outcome that I wanted to achieve and then working backwards from there to figure out what the steps are to get you to that goal. And I think ultimately that's what we're talking about here with the smarter goals is like, don't just set this arbitrary goal, reverse engineer it, which is the final R in Kasey's smarter goals, about reverse engineering by identifying the outcome of really what you want to achieve and work backwards from there, because it can feel really daunting to just make this list of things. And then you're staring back at this list 6 months from now, or on December 31st of 2025 saying like, did I even do any of this? Did I accomplish any of this? And I think that if we could sit back and reverse engineer what the outcome is that we desire and sort of break it down into smaller steps or smaller pieces with clear action steps and like a tangible action plan, we would be much more likely to follow through.
I'm going to specifically note, this is the second time you guys led me into the next one. So I'm just calling out. I'm not jumping to it.
We're on the last one.
I'm
going to jump in. So with the reverse engineering, I thought that was a great thing that you reframed with Joelle. You have all these big things, which is the fun part. It's New Year's resolution. Here are the 15 things I would love to accomplish this year. Now, how does each one happen? So maybe I want to run a marathon this year. Okay, how does that happen? Maybe more reasonable for a lot of listeners. I want to lose 30 pounds this year. Okay, what do I need to accomplish that? What are the tools that I need? What do I need to specifically do? Am I educated enough in these areas to be able to accomplish these on my own, to implement the right protocols? Resources. Do I need a coach? What does that cost? How can I, siphon my budget to allow me to do these certain things? How long can I do that for? What are the things I can reshape in my life? How many lives you live in?
9.
9 lives, like a cat. So basically just here's what I would love to do. Now, how do we do that? So you guys can still do that 30,000 foot overview. It's obviously super fun to do. It's big, it's powerful. It creates this emotional reaction to it where there's additional buy-in. And that's where you have these resolutionists who are gung-ho for the first month, and then things don't start moving in the right direction for the reasons we just talked about. So putting these things together gives you that initial burst with that emotional attachment to these things, but also creates these actionable things you're going to do along the way to get there.
That's something that I've done without really realizing I've been doing it, if that makes sense. Like I kind of just do that naturally when I set a goal, but I think about the postpartum period and like just going through my last postpartum with Cora. Like obviously I had goals eventually of just like performance and like getting stronger in the gym. So I kind of reverse engineer that from day one to figure out how I can rebuild to get to that point. And that's really the approach that I took with Cora. And I would get questions all the time, like, you know, like, what's your secret? Like, at what point postpartum did you finally like feel like you got your body back? And it's hard for me to answer those because it was such a gradual build of focusing on, you know, refining my habits and re-implementing what nutrition needed to be to support both milk supply and what I wanted to do in the gym, and going through that list. But I really did go through that list of like reverse engineering. Okay, here's where I want to be at some point this year. How am I going to get there? And it's so helpful to have that clear path and have that clear plan. And I know a lot of you don't necessarily have the support and education behind that we do, because like obviously this is our job, and I'm gonna push coaching here because that's why we do what we do. Is our coaches take your goal and reverse engineer it
for you. Right.
That is what we do.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, that just kind of, it gives you the clarity without overwhelming you and leaving you to figure out, well, I don't even know how to get there. Like, maybe you just don't have that knowledge, and that's okay. So I just wanted to plug that because I think sometimes a lot of people think coaching is like, okay, here's your training program, here's your macros, but we're really breaking things down on a micro level when it comes to your goals in your life and what your life looks like.
And I really hope that is the biggest aha moment that listeners have to this episode, because a lot of times, and this almost feels like common sense because we have to do it for business, right? If you have an objective, it's like, okay, how do we get to that objective? It's not just, I want this objective to happen and I write it down and it's just going to happen. It's, okay, what are the next steps to make this thing happen? And a lot of times that's what we do with resolutions, with goals, is this is what I want to do. And we write it down once and then we never look at it again. We think we're just making decisions willy-nilly throughout the day that will eventually lead to that over time. If you want to do anything, if you want to learn something, if you want to accomplish something, if you want to reach this goal, you have to know what that step is. The tiny little things we do every single day that lead to that goal over time. That's what we talk about with habits. You need that plan. You need to measure it. You need to be consistent with it. And if you don't know how you actually get there, if there is no plan, if it's just, I want to do this thing, it is painfully obvious why it isn't happening, why it's not going to be accomplished, and why it hasn't been accomplished. It's this vicious roller coaster of progress and downfalls. You're spinning your wheels, ending up year over year in the same place. That is literally why. So let that last piece be the aha moment that some of you have been missing so you can kick ass with those goals this year.
To bring it full circle, because we started this conversation with talking about Project B, I think so much about how Project B is a result of us reverse engineering the outcome that we want for other people. And we have this dream of what we want the outcome to be and the impact we want to have. And so we have all had to sit back and say, okay, here's the outcome we want for other people. I'm not even talking about like our financial goals or anything like that. I'm talking about here's the outcome of the impact that we want to have and the mission that we're on. Now let's reverse engineer. What do we need to create in order to make that happen? And that's how Project B came about.
And just to be fully transparent with you guys, like, in the past, we've talked about different things that, oh, you know what, this is the golden egg. This is the thing this is the last thing we're going to need to do. It's going to be so great for everybody. And like, we're going to be set. That is the exact opposite of how this project has gone. Like we've done the things, we built the businesses, we see the state of the world and we're like, the world needs this. How do we help the rest of the world? How do we help people? How do we make their lives change for the better? How do we show them what works specifically for them? Like, giving you guys the tools and resources, like, this is the thing. Here's how I'm going to be consistent with X, Y, Z. And these are the things that do the best for me specifically. Our mission for Project B has literally been to make the world a happier, healthier place. It's a grand statement. And every decision we've made has been with that outcome in mind. It has absolutely nothing to do with financials. Those things will take care of themselves when we're helping so many people. And you know, I feel like I'm going to accidentally say something I'm not supposed to say. So I'm trying to be very careful with how I lay this out. Josh. But we love you guys, and
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I guess that's where we're going to wrap it up. It's a good way to end. Where can they find you?
I'm at Alessandra Skutnik.
At Joelle Samantha.
at Josh Skutnick.
Everything else you need is linked in the show notes.